So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Matt Foskett. I look after HPE here at Exeed, and I've got Neil Holmes from HPEFS to do this presentation. We want this to be kind of an interactive session, I guess. So if you feel there's a question that you need answered during the presentation, be sure to kind of chime in. Otherwise, leave yourselves on mute. And if you don't want to ask a question, because Holmesy can be quite hard to get in a word in, you can leave it to the end, and we'll do a Q&A session at the end. So Exeed's had a long relationship with HPEFS and a very prosperous one. Last couple of years, we've managed to facilitate millions of dollars of closed deals for our resellers, and it's been a good relationship. We thought now is a good time as New Zealand potentially moves to level 1 to present the benefits of financing for IT as businesses adjust to the economic downturn. And while some industries have been severely affected from COVID-19, there's no denying that, a lot of New Zealand businesses have opportunities that other businesses don't have globally, with New Zealand being a potential safe haven from the virus. In an economic downturn, we know a couple of things. Smart ideas, smart people, and smart businesses will survive and potentially thrive. And secondly, in an economic downturn, cash flow is king. Your customers' money will have more value to them investing in those ideas, those people, and in the business than on the IT equipment that they run to deliver that idea. So to explain it and all this and more in much more clarity than I ever could, I present the grand poobah of IT financing himself, Neil Holmes from HPEFS. I'll hand it over to you now, Holmesy.
Wow, Fossey, what an intro, man. How could I look at big shoes to fill there?
Did you hear my clapping?
I did.
Good
I did.
Hey,
hello everybody, and thanks for joining Matt and I on this morning's session. This morning, the agenda is we're going to talk a little bit around what we're seeing in the market, along with our COVID programs, who we are and what we offer, and some thoughts and reasons around why to lease and why HPEFS, following up with a brief overview and wrapping up with a Q&A session. As Fossey said, feel free to jump in at any point in time, while the iron's hot, and we can try and answer those questions on the spot. So whilst there's still some dark clouds on the horizon, which hopefully will skirt around us, but look, during the lockdown, I've never been busier. I've had significant volumes from small one-off transactions through to large complex projects, with customers looking for alternate funding options, and a number of customers even looking to restructure schedules or take advantage of payment deferrals. And of course, there's been a significant uptake in our COVID-19 offers as well, which are all designed to help partners get their or channel partners and customers acquire and supply equipment without impeding their cash flow too much. So if we look at our CV19 offers, the first offer is pretty self-explanatory. It's a standard 90-day deferral program. So basically acquire the equipment now and make no payments for 90 days. And then the remainder of term follows after that, whether that be a 33 or 45 or 57-month term. It covers all HP product suites, and it's also available on other products as required by customers and partners alike. This program is our 1% CV 2020 program, again HPE centric. Others by arrangement, but it's designed for the customer to pay just 1% of the purchase price per month for the remainder of 2020, with the balance of term commencing in January 2021. Meaning that if you look at this example here, we're saying a $100,000 3-year desktop deal. The customer will pay just $1,000 a month for the remainder of 2020, and then come 2021. on a 3-year term, that's going to be circa $3,300 a month over the remaining 30 months. That basically equates to a very, very small number in terms of interest rates. It's really around the 1% range, so very, very attractive. It's not designed for us to make money out of. It's designed for customers to acquire that equipment without impeding their cash flows, and for us to cover our usual costs from an extended interest perspective. So that's the kind of reason why it's a little bit more expensive than a straight three-year one. Not more, but just a little bit. So then, if we look at HPEFS, just a couple of points on who FS are. I won't go into too much detail about it, but it is surprising to how many people think that HP and HPE are still the same entity. Look, about 5 years ago, the HP Corporation was split up into 4. So HP Inc., as most people will know it, looks after PCs, printers, and consumables. HPE, who I'm assigned to, we look after server, storage, network, and Aruba products. DXC, which was formerly EDS, took ownership of services portfolio, and Micro Focus, who is a UK-based entity, took over the HPE software portfolio. All 4 entities are separate and listed on the various global stock exchanges. Of course, HPEFS is the captive financial services arm of HPE. And since that breakup, of course, we've maintained operating arrangements with HP Inc. and have a very strong focus on both HPE and HP products. In fact, I carry business cards for both entities. Another cornerstone of our business is the environment. You know, we have a mandate for looking after the environment. We run a circular economy concept. And of course, the other thing to consider is leaving the best till last. HPEFS has 2 dedicated headcount in New Zealand. So I look after the channel, so the Exeed and all Exeed's channel partners, and Wilco looks after the enterprise accounts, and primarily in the governmental based space and large multinationals and globals. So what we offer, of course, we specialise in IT&T funding, traditional lease-based products, both from an OPEX and CAPEX perspective, right through to a modern world subscription and DaaS, or infrastructure as a service, and through to the circular economy, which I talked about just a minute ago. From 1 to 5 year terms with payment plans to suit, be they standard or tailored. We look after all of that, the HPE, but we also maintain a vendor agnostic capability. So this slide here is just a little bit about our financial services sector and the asset refurbishing and remarketing we do. So we've been active in this program for over 20 years in our Andover, Massachusetts Technology Centre, and over 7 years in our Erskine Scotland Centre. Last year alone, we processed 4 million assets, remarketing 89% of them and recycling another 11% in secure, environmentally responsible manners. Based on HPE recyclability assessments, 98% of all HPE product is materially recyclable. Again, the other thing about this one, and this is very, very pertinent, one of the things about leasing, it does give customers the ability to have a green element to their business. Simply just give the stuff back to us, and then they're passing that responsibility on to us, where we have known and valued programs that can manage that in that responsible manner. So why lease, and why? There's really 7 main reasons, and the primary reasons to lease, whilst those top 5 I guess they are materially historic. right now, as Matt said earlier, liquidity is the most important in the current environment, followed closely by, very closely by ROE. So maintaining liquidity and margin is extremely important in the current economic and climate, particularly if a business wants to survive the world we're in today. Let's face it, without liquidity and margin position, you may not have a business. So it's very, very important that those are addressed, and wherever possible, look at alternate sources of funding. Clearly, asset-based financing through vendor financing like HPEFS is probably one of the cheapest forms of access to funds that customers are ever going to get outside of secured property investments. So this slide here is it's a bit of a simplistic view, but it's one that resonates well with a lot of people, and it kind of lets them understand what leasing is actually about. So in the first silo, if I look at that, you've purchased $100,000 worth of kit. So at year zero, you've expensed that $100,000, and then it depreciates at the rate of 33% per annum. So at the end of 3 years, you've actually burned your $100,000, and you've got a bunch of devices. I failed to call them assets, but you've got a bunch of devices that are technically worth nothing. So if you look at the lease silo, which is the next one, yes, you've got your equipment. You've paid no money out from day one, but the cost of running that lease program is about the same. So it's about 33.66 and 100. So at the end of that lease program, you've probably churned $100,000. But the real advantage, folks, is when you actually look at that column over to the right. In this column, I've assumed that the business has a return on equity of around 20%. So if you had $100,000 worth of kit you needed and you leased that from column 2, you've still got your $100,000 in your back pocket. Now, when you invest that back in your business, year 1, year 2, year 3, it's going to deliver you about $20,000. So over the course of that 3-year period, that $100,000 would now be worth $160,000. If you discount that by the $100,000 you're going to burn in your lease in column 2, then there's a $60K arbitrage in your back pocket for really doing nothing. So that's the real advantage of the lease program. And of course, customers may still choose to claim depreciation and interest expense if they so desire. And again, stress, that's a very, very simplistic view on life. I'm not a tax accountant, but it does resonate with, well, lets people actually understand what leasing is actually all about. New Zealand as a business community tend not to think about a cost of cash. They tend to think cash is free because I've got it in the bank. That's fine. I can just pay for it. It's easy. Today, when liquidity is becoming tighter and tighter, and that's driven for us in particular, that's driven around liquidity in the US market. As bond spreads widen, the cost of funds goes up. Even though in New Zealand we've got a 25 basis point OCR, a lot of funding is derived out of the US, and as I say, as that liquidity goes up, people pay more for it. So why HPEFS? Of course, we believe we've got unrivaled pricing and solutions portfolio combined with speed of execution that make it pretty hard to match, in all fairness. We've got credit approvals that can be as quick as 90 seconds, and generally settlements are within 72 hours of the returned documentation packaging. We're vendor agnostic, as we mentioned before, with the ability for partners like Exeed to expedite processing at the point of order. We don't charge any fees, hidden or otherwise. If a customer does go into arrears for an extended period of time, we will charge penalty interest, but that's on a very rare occasion. In the 4 years I've been here, I've never seen that implemented yet. And otherwise, to provide further transparency around what we do, we provide all our customers with agreement schedule details via our 24/7 online customer portal. And of course, ensuring the customer has compliance with e-waste initiatives are underpinned by our circular economy concept. So this one here is just a quick snapshot of our process. A lot of this gets negated when you start working with Exeed, because they can do that at point of quoting. So if you look at step 1 through step 4, generally they are all dealt with by the Exeed team at that point in time. The delivery and installation, of course, that's there's not much that Exeed can do in that space. That's reliant on you, the channel partners, to be able to do that. And then the final piece of the puzzle is the certificate acceptance. That document, even though the customer can sign the lease agreement right from day one, it is the customer acceptance certificate that needs to be signed and dated that is the catalyst to kick the lease off. That is, the customer is accepting that you as a channel partner have delivered everything that they want in accordance with their wishes, and they give us the corresponding go-ahead to start the lease. In this process, there are 2 areas which are always being challenging. The first one is you as a partner need to provide us an invoice that absolutely matches the equipment schedule. Now, that equipment schedule is generally generated by your quote, and then so once that's out the door and signed by the customer, the expectation from us to you is we will get an invoice that absolutely matches that, both in terms of content and dollar value. Even if you do something as simple as go, oh, we forgot to put the freight on there, so we'll just invoice HPEFS for the freight, that will hold up the process. It needs to be on the schedule at the point the schedule is signed by the customer. If there is some thought that there could be some variability in this, it might be better to hold off getting the documents generated until the project's completed, and we base the BLA documents off your invoice rather than a quote. But that's entirely driven by you as a channel partner in terms of what you would like to do. But if there is a variance in the invoice relative to the schedule, then it means we could still do it, but we have to recut the documentation and have the customer re-sign it. So that's one very, very important point. If you take nothing away from that today, please remember that. The second thing that's always a bit of a bone of contention is anti-money laundering. Now, that's got a slide all its own, so let me just go to that one. Oops, gone too far. So anti-money laundering is legislation that requires us and any other financial institution to detail who the beneficial owners of that business are. Now, that is somebody that either owns 25% or more of the business, or has day-to-day effective control. Now, the day-to-day effective control test simply is customers like a public listed company, or a business that's perhaps owned by a trust or has multiple owners less than the 25%. Generally speaking, we need the full name, the date of birth, the residential address, and driver's license number and version or passport number and expiry date. We then cross-verify this data against New Zealand Companies Office, DIA, Land Transport, LINZ, etc., etc. As Fossey will attest, we've come a long way in the last couple of years. When I first started, that ID required certified IDs and certified documents, and it was just an absolutely it was a minefield that really was a
dog's breakfast, I think you'd call it.
Thanks, Fossey. So just to give you some sense of what that's all about, it's an absolutely non-negotiable process. There are massive fines for non-compliance. In recent notable cases, AUSTRAC, which is the Australian regulator, they pinged the CommBank of Australia for 53,000 breaches of the Act. Now, each breach carries a maximum penalty of $1.1 million. They end up settling at $700 million. And then hot on the heels of that one, AUSTRAC are currently pursuing Westpac for 23 million breaches of the Act. and each breach attracting between 17 and 21 million dollars, which makes the potential fine on that a behemoth, $391 trillion. Now, clearly, that ain't going to happen because that would absolutely kill the bank and the New Zealand Australian economy. But it does give you a sense of the teeth that are involved in that legislation, and the lengths we have to do to make sure that we're compliant. The other thing of note is, in my experience, since we started this online verification process, the amount of people that get their date of birth or residential address is absolutely amazing. And the other thing that really sticks in my mind is the number of people that get an incorrect driver's license version. And that's the three-digit number next to your license number. That changes if a license is reissued, or if you go from a learner's license to a full license or whatever it is, you'll get a different version. The number will always remain the same, but the version will change. And similarly, if you lose your license due to court outcomes or demerit points, that will change. The number of people I recall an example where the customer was absolutely adamant that the license version was correct. It was the only license he'd ever had. I went back to LTSA on 2 occasions, and finally LTSA said to me, "Can you please ask the holder of that license to make contact with us?" Turns out he came back to me a week or so later. He came back and he said, "You know what?" He said, "My license had been suspended due to demerits," and he did not know. So, those are the kinds of things that we come across all the time. So with that concludes my presentation. I hope I kept it brief enough for you, and I hope you've had found some interest in this. But look, does anybody have any questions?
Hey Neil, Jeremy here, Melbourne Commercial Services, mate. How are you?
Jeremy, good mate. You?
Doing very well, thanks, buddy. Hey, mate, how protective of this slide deck are you?
Yeah, look, not too bad.
All right, mate, cool. I'll click you an email.
Yep.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm from Northern Commercial team. Just wondering, what's a process time?
From woe to go. So yep. if you're looking at schools, government institutions, pretty quick. The partner connection tool, will do credit approvals inside 90 seconds generally.
Okay.
That tool does up to $600,000, and so Exeed and I both use that tool with monotonous regularity. So generally, we'll get approval very, very quick. From there, it becomes documents generating. So once we've got the credit approval, it's just a matter of the channel partners providing us with some details of what you want on that lease schedule. And schedules generally come out inside about 24 to 48 hours. Once the customer signs and returns that, and then you deliver the equipment and invoice us, the settlements process is about 72 hours from there on in.
All good.
And that's probably a key point. That's a key point to note there with the liquidity thing, with the cash flow thing. Rather than your customer, you giving them 30 days credit to pay that invoice. HPEFS are paying that as soon as the customer accepts, within 72 hours. So that's money that you get back into your business a lot quicker.
Look, the other thing of note within that is, look, customers. It's much easier to sell a monthly payment plan than it is to sell a five-digit invoice sale price. So always consider it. You'd be surprised how many people You know, look, a lot of time people say to me, "Oh no, they're cash rich. They don't need to lease." Look, it's not about whether you're cash rich. It's about the right tool for the right process. Never ever preempt anything what a customer may or may not want, because you just simply don't know what their liquidity position is. You don't know what projects they've got on the go. I would suggest to everybody on the call that you always put that as an option.
Yeah, I totally back that, Neil. Totally agree. And team, just so you know, there are rebates when using HPE, and I've already spoken to Jed about what that would look like for you as team members, and Jed has agreed that that will be seen as services dollars of services profit that goes towards your services target. So always another reason why for a whiffing for you guys to be able to use HPE. I probably need to brief you very quickly, Neil, as well, with the website internally to help team members offer solutions and services.
Yep.
So I need to engage with you to be able to build a page for you in regards to HPE.
Yeah, let's take that offline and catch up in the next week or so.
Cool.
And look, for everybody that's on the call, look, Matt, if you need any assistance, Matt and the Exeed team are available, and of course I'm available at any point in time. We certainly look forward to working with you all, and thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Any other
guys.
questions? Just get into contact with either Neil or myself. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, team.
Thank you.